Now I know what you're thinking, chat. There is no way a Maxonomic Smite chair can make me that much better of a gamer. Aggro, I'm already in gold. How could I possibly get any better? Let me tell you, in between games, Mackenzie sat in my chair for 2 minutes and a headset appeared on her head. She immediately queued an assault, instantly got Zeus and pentakilled the enemy team on the first wave. Didn't even have her ult. It was insane. Get a Smite chair. It'll improve your game instantly. Smite Max is the code that you can use. And of course, Mackenzie, BM placed a Smite chair ward on the pentakilled bodies of her enemies. Because she's just kind of an alpha dog like that. There's nothing else you have to do. She's going to stay with me as this whole death segment, so I hope you guys are all okay with that. Mifflin, I hope you're cool if Mackenzie helps us talk a little bit about the upcoming Sanguine Obey matchup.
I would love it. I want nothing more than to have Mackenzie on this desk segment. It's less talking for me, more dog on the desk. I mean, it's all wins.
Well, she doesn't talk, Mifflin. She can be better than you at Smite, but she can't talk.
Okay.
The Smite chair is not that powerful. Let's get that. We're not trying to make crazy claims here and have the Better Business Bureau called on us. I mean, she's a dog, man. Let's keep it real. Let's start. What's that? You want to start with Obey? Okay. We'll start with Obey Alliance. Mackenzie thinks that their duo lane has been really, really improved, Mifflin, and despite their loss against PK yesterday, 2-1, Obey is going to be climbing up those standings pretty quickly if both Bobby and Wowie can continue to play the way they have been recently.
Yeah, I think, A, you told me Mackenzie can't talk, and then B, she brought up a point, but you know what? I'll run with it.
She told me telepathically,
right.
bro. What?
God, I can't stand you. Yes, Wowie and Inbound are looking at like the most improved parts of Obey right now. I think in particular, Inbound has expanded his God pool, found a couple of gods that are really working out with him. Wowie has found gods very early on in Phase 2 that he's been able to work out on incredibly well. I think that with Wowie, my main concern with him is he tends to play a little bit passively in lane, even when you expect him to have a winning matchup. But I think it kind of fits with the playstyle. Obey's not constantly ganking duo lane. They don't have a jungler like Lazra who likes to show up at level 3. Instead, Wowie waits till around that level 15 point, and then he rotates out, and he's a menace in the team fight.
He's really found his stride on this Rom pick as of late. It's been Rom, Cupid, and Heimdall, really the 3 picks consistently for Obey, though that is not exclusive to them. A lot of teams are really sticking towards the Rom and the Cupid in particular. On the other end, Sanguine has really tried to return to form in phase number 2. They're starting to get there, I feel like, a little bit, Miff, but still clearly a little bit off.
Yeah, I think it really does come down to, and you've highlighted it perfectly in the past, I think Panatom in the jungle is very hesitant to go towards the picks that he's incredibly comfortable on. He's got a very strong Pele. Thor is one of his best picks, but it seems like he's more willing to play gods like Nemesis and just these more meta-centric picks, which fits the identity of the team, if not the individual player himself. I'd like to see them, if they're not willing to stop going towards the meta, at least try to play more towards their strengths that we saw in Phase 1, which is that late-game team fight. But it seems like everything in Phase 2 is starting to switch up with them. They're trying to buy a little bit more so into the early game. They're still going towards these picks that haven't really been working out for them. Rongyu has been hesitant in particular to go towards his Horus, which I still think he's the best Horus in the league. It just seems like interesting decisions from the team.
Meta shifting, always a difficult part of adjusting at the SPL level, and that's been the real test for Sanguine. I mean, they did it once with one meta in phase number 1. Phase 2, if they can continue to show that they can adapt to new metas and play the different styles, I think is going to be the mark of how good this team can really be. In fact, I talked about exactly that with Netrioid earlier on. All right, we've got Netrioid ADC for Sanguine joining us here now. And Netrioid, it feels like this coming back into Phase 2, a lot of teams are changing. I mean, Radiance is kind of sliding. You guys aren't playing to the same level that you were before, where the bottom end of the SPL is really starting to rise up with their level of play. Is it hard to try and like kind of stabilize in a moment like this, where every team feels like they're changing their play style so much?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's hard, and we know for a fact that teams are going to change. Like, of course, we all want to win, so they're gonna try to find out new things, try to find out new strategies, new gods, new picks. And we're good with that because there's time for Worlds left, so we're still good. We have a lot to learn, and we're just talking as a team, like what can we do, what new things we can bring to the table. So yeah, we're fine.
Yeah, phase one, I mean, you guys obviously performed way ahead of schedule for what everyone thought you were going to do. It's kind of hard to remember sometimes that you guys are SPL rookies with how well you've played. But this is some of your first opportunities to try and adapt to a new meta. How much harder is it to do that at the SPL level? You know, you've done it a lot at the SEC, you know, minor league level, but I imagine up here it happens a lot faster where teams adapt to a new meta.
Yeah, that's for sure. Like in SPL, people know how, they've been playing SPL for years. They know how to like adapt. They know what to do. They know everything. So, and of course they can like make mistakes too. But we know that it's changing like that fast. So we just have to like keep watching our games, see what we could have done, what we should do now or from now on. So yeah, of course, it feels really different from the league that we were like last year. We were in the minor, and the SPL is like really, really, really different.
Certainly has been. Today you go up against Obey Alliance, a team that is one of those squads that's really rising. What do you think has been the biggest difference from you watching them that has really led to their success?
I think Obey has found their identity, and that you can see that, for example, when Wolfie and Wowie are playing the backline, they really like play with each other. They know how to peel with damage. They know what to do. Wowie has been popping off lately, so I think that's one of the reasons. But overall, the team has found their identity, and I'm pretty sure like it's gonna be a fun set and good games.
Can't wait to watch it, man. I agree with you. I think it's going to be a good set to watch. Good luck today, man. Rooting for you.
Thank you.
As he said, Obey's duo lane really been popping off and their team identity a little bit more solidified than it has been previously. I'm excited to see what happens in the picks and bans for game number 1 here, Myth, because Obey has really decided that they're going to go with their style. The Sylvanas for inbound, the Mercury pick for Sino, the Ra for Wolfie, though other teams are starting to adopt it, Raijin for Wolfie. I mean, they're just picking Obey gods, and it's been working out for them.
Hey, you didn't even bring up the Nike jungle, the Arachne jungle, the Ymir for inbound as well. These guys are weird, but there's a strength inherent to that. Now that it's a little bit harder to ban out what you're thinking Obey is going to play, because if you ban out directly against them, you're leaving up all sorts of meta picks, Yamoja, Persephone. There's still gods out there that are just a little bit too strong to be left ignored, which is incredibly strong for Obey's strength. But the same can be said of Sanguine. If Obey is trying to take away the things that aren't nearly as meta, Sanguine plays all the best picks at the absolute top level. I think it's a very interesting dichotomy that's going to develop between these two teams in the picks and bans.
Agreed, and I think we're already starting to see where Obey is turning their attention. It's towards the mid lane and Shinto, and for good reason. Shinto has been an absolute animal for Sanguine in the mid lane all year long. Hell and Persephone immediately taken off the board, as Sanguine's first 2 bans are directed at that duo lane in the form of Cupid and Sobek bans. It's interesting to me, Myth, because a couple weeks ago, it felt like Cupid was the god that everyone was first picking, but it ended up being Rom being more impactful. Now we're starting to see teams ban the Cupid and leave open the Rom pick. We saw that in Game 3 in our last set between Ghost and Radiant, so we're seeing it here now with Sanguine. They're letting Obey take Rom, and I'd be shocked if they went any other direction than Rom first pick for Wowie.
Yeah, I think Wowie is making a misplay if he's not screaming at his team to get him the ROM here. It's one of his best picks. I think that we're starting to see a shift in focus towards Cupid just because he's a little bit more impactful in these team fight phases, especially considering we're starting to see a lot more mobility-based mages out of mid, Raijin, Merlin, all those. The cripple field going to be hugely impactful, as well as assassins out of the jungle. I think that it really does help out just having that no-play zone that you can help out with your team, as well as just the sustain around these elongated fire giant dances. But Rom, foregone. Yamoja picked up. I'll never complain. Yamoja, for my money, is the best god in Smite.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about Yamoja, and Sanguine was maybe hoping Obey would do the same. They do not. They lock that in for inbound, and this is something that I've been asking teams to do. There are a few teams in the league that seem to consistently be the ones banning Yamoja, regardless of which side they're on. Obey being one, Renegades being the other. Force them to prove to you that they can play it. Now, force inbound as well as he's been playing recently. to prove that he is a threat on this Yemoja. And it's correct for Obey to take it here, by the way. You cannot afford to give Rongyu one of his best gods. I think that this is the only answer for Obey Alliance, and I like that they've gone this way.
But I think you're right to point it out that we don't have very many data points on inbounds Yemoja in particular. This is one of the most mechanically demanding gods in Smite in general, not just inside of that support role, but in the entire game, which is why we're starting to see some of these teams really realize, okay, well, Yemoja may be strong, but we don't really have one, and that's why we start to see them ban them out. And Sanguine don't come out behind here. They still pick up Ram and Amaterasu, an incredibly strong duo here. Amaterasu likely going to the solo lane, Ram likely going to the long lane, picking up the next best hunter outside of Cupid, as well as potentially just the best solo laner. I don't think you can complain about what Sanguine has.
Obey forced into taking Heimdall right now if they want to make sure it doesn't get banned before the next ban phase. Those have been one of the only 3 gods that, wow, he's played as of late, so that's not a surprise. And then Thor, likely for Ducky in that solo lane. Remember, when Obey started popping off recently, a lot of it was centered on what Ducky was doing on this pick in the solo lane. So I like this a lot for Obey because it is still a flex pick. I think it's safe. If I'm on Sanguine, I'm banning junglers away from Obey. I'm assuming that this is going solo. But even if it doesn't, Sino can play this god. I think it's a great pick for Obey.
Yeah, strong for the flex, but generally I do think you're right to point out that it is likely going to Ducky. He looks so absolutely strong on this pick, and I think it fits his playstyle incredibly well, and the playstyle of Obey in general. They love to take the 3v3 fight in mid, and having a Thor out of the solo lane means that you're likely just going to have a 4 versus 3 with that semi-global ultimate Anvil of Dawn just coming through out of the short lane. There's not really very many solo laners that can keep up with that rotation path. Ducky's not really struggling too much in lane on this pick. It's a fantastic initiator as well, just to match a little bit of what Amaterasu is going to be able to bring to the late game. Smart pick for the boys.
Interesting that Cthulhu is still available here, though, so that is something that Ducky has played a lot of. If there's a pick that would be worth taking this Thor away from him, could be that one, potentially, as Sanguine ban away 2 signature picks for Obey, and I think 2 that work very, very well together. The Ra and the Erlong Shen, 2 bans that make total sense to me, as Sanguine now going to have to go a little bit deeper into Rongyu's god pool after this Kuzenbo ban. Still have a couple of supports that Rongyu plays quite a bit that you could take away here, but Obey decided to take away the Nemesis from Panatom. But as we were saying at the very beginning of this death segment, Miff, I feel like you kind of want Panatom to be playing the Nemesis sometimes.
Much prefer him on Nemesis than his Pele or even his Thor, even his Mercury. All those gods Panatom is able to control the pace of the game on. And it's interesting that Obey decided to ban out the Nemesis here, considering we know that Sanguine does like to pick up the Cthulhu occasionally. You could have that Amaterasu flex if you needed to, and then have Cthulhu come through into the soul lane, Nemesis being one of the few direct counter picks to that god. But it seems like they're not going to have to worry about that one too much here. The Hercules getting picked up, likely going to that support role, leaving Amaterasu into that solo lane. Now, Olorun getting picked up by Obey. This is strong. It's got a lot of synergy with their team comp already. Yemoja plus Olorun having the walls in there and then drop a sanctified field in the center. It's going to make it very hard to escape out of these team fights. But there's not too much in terms of front lines so far for Obey. And Mercury's not really going to fit that role. Are Yemoja and Thor alone going to be able to keep people away from your Olorun in the back line? It's going to be hard against gods like Hercules, like Amaterasu.
Agreed, but this is a pick that Wolfie has gone to a lot. And I do like having some sort of sustain against Thoth in the mid lane. Otherwise, that poke feels like it's nearly impossible to deal with. So Olorun having that little heal is helpful as hello. A god we haven't seen really at all. Only 1 game played here in phase number 2, and it was a loss. It was Susano in the solo lane for solo Patrol on Renegades. This is the first time we've seen him in the jungle all phase.
Yeah, and the jungle is where he belongs. Let me get that
Agreed.
out there immediately. Yeah, Susano jungle, much better than Susano solo. And we know that Panatom has a Susano. He was playing it semi-regularly back in phase 1, and he had a huge impact on this god. It's a very good dive pick into Olorun in general, even into Mercury. If he looks for that third ability, you can just pull him off and then look for the burst damage there. I think Susano, into this draft in particular, is going to be hugely impactful. He's going to have a little bit of a hard time trying to shut down the Heimdall in the back, but when there's an Olorun on the enemy team, I don't think this Susano is going to be looking anywhere else.
Feels like it's going to be a lot on Panatom and what he can do on this pick, but Obey get a lot of their signature picks. Got to throw it down to the game because Mackenzie's saying she wants to hit a ranked queue right now. Dave and Gore, it's all yours.
That's right, it is Dolson and Goremizer to round out this weekend in the SPL. Doug, of course, working the camera for us. And Gore, I've been calling it the battle for 4th place, but that's not the case at all. This is a battle for Sanguine to keep pace for 3rd place. 3 teams potentially with the Sanguine win tied for 3rd place, and Obey obviously trying to roll some momentum forward for themselves. Now, one pick we looked at, I think, in picks and bans was this Susano, and how his place probably in the jungle more than the solo lane. Something you might think people would say about Thor, but we've been proven wrong by Ducky. Thor can absolutely have a big impact, especially for Obey out of that solo lane.
Yeah, that's something to keep your eyes on. If you remember the last time Ducky played Thor, then you're going to be looking for 2, 3, maybe even 4-man dunks with the semi-global ults. Very good rotations, impactful, and admittedly, in at least one of those games, the reason Obey won when they were able to come through. And then sometimes he comes through and he's just a helpful factor on the squad while someone else is able to come in. I think Sino on this Mercury is going to play into this pretty well. Same thing with Wolfie on the Ola run. There's a lot of factors here for Obey that I'm actually very happy to see for them, because they are the ones playing upset. And if you want to play upset, this is the kind of draft you need. You've got a few comfort picks that come through, a few top meta picks that come through, and all of them that play really well together. But Sanguine are doing much of the same. A lot of picks here that have just felt better for them. Rongyu on Hercules is maybe the one that still needs the most proving of all of them. And right now, it's a little shaky.
Oh, pre-beads from Wowie, but it's the double pushback from Rongyu. First blood Nitrioid. Less than a minute into the game. Just a bit of mistiming there. And Rongyu makes him pay.
Consider it proven. Within 30 seconds of me finishing that sentence, that's exactly what you need out of Rongyu. You get the beads, you get the shell, you still get the kill. Not only that, but it goes on to your carry, and an awesome 2-man blink push. That duo lane is going to be a fun one, a little explosive at that. I expect this Hercules to try and keep up this amount of pace. Inbound, it's something that you have to keep your eye on. Umoja, she's not necessarily going to be your best level 1, although she is a lot of pressure over there. I think between the ROM Hercules, she's got her work cut out for her. I think, though, she's going to scale a little bit better into the late game, unless Rongyu can keep that kind of momentum going. So we'll have to watch this duo lane closely, just to make sure that he can keep that amount of pressure applied without losing too much for Sanguine.
Well, the chat votes 55% for Obey in this one, Goremizer. The Obey squad on a bit of a surge here as of late, demanding some respect. And I love now that a lot of the votes we have in chat going into these games are the 50-something to 40-something%. Maybe you get a 60-40. But it's so close in so many of these matchups here recently. I mean, if you asked us at the beginning of the phase what we would expect the voting to be for this one, no way. So I think that's hats off to Obey.
Yeah.
And I agree with what Netrioid said. I think this team has started to find that identity and put it into play.
8 weeks ago, if this wasn't like a 90-10 split in the votes, then people are trolling, right? Like, it's just one of those things, especially and this is maybe holding it against them for too long, but the first week Obey had in Phase 2, we were wondering if they had played that much in the downtime, because they came in still playing the old meta, and they just got rocked and taken down. But they have grown so much since then. In fact, even here with a gank on Ducky, I don't know if it's enough.
That's easy for Panatom. You just walk it, Ducky, the wall, not enough, and Yarkor will snag back the second kill of the game for Sanguine, especially the Sanguine team, too. Obviously, not thrilled with how their games have looked here as of late, but I already like the adjustments we saw in picks and ban score. Put Susano, put Panatom on the Susano, a pick that we know he can make an impact with. Not this phase, at least, but I see Panatom, I see him on Susano. And somehow I know all is right in the world.
Yeah, and Phase 1 won a majority of the games that was able to come through. They've picked him 13 times, so like he said, it's something they go to. It's not their #1 jungler, because his Thor, I think, for the longest time was most notable, but if that gets kind of swept out from underneath you and sent to the solo lane, of all things, on the other side, it's always good to have that secondary one. Panatom's also the one that realistically has to have this stellar performance, right? I mean, you go back and look at where they've been successful and where the team has fallen for Sanguine, And most of the time you can look at Panatom's slash line, and that usually dictates one or the other.
Right.
I think sometimes they've been able to win even with Panatom maybe not having a stellar game. But, I mean, if Panatom is just having a bad day, everybody on Sanguine seems to kind of get sucked into it, almost like a black hole that pulls their momentum in with it. And so, if he's on Susano, if he's going to find success, which regularly he has, at least through Phase 1, then at least they keep him comfortable, which is what they've needed to do this phase.
Right. So it's a good start for Sanguine now. 2 kills on the board. There is the looming threat of this scaling that we know Obey has on their side. And, you know, I think the desk properly expressed maybe some concern with Panatom being able to find that backline, but Obey has a really good team fight. You look at this Yamoja ult, the Sanctified Field almost on its own is fantastic for team fighting. We know what Sino can do. Ducky is fantastic at locking down some of these targets. Sanguine is maybe going to rely on Shinto and Netrioid for some of that long-range damage to try to keep Obey at half HP before the fight even starts.
I'm keeping eyes on Shinto more than anything. Most of the time, I think that we saw, actually last time, I believe it was Sanguine that were playing this Thoth, Shinto was able to find a 3-man ult with that final judgment, and it's little things like that that are going to just annihilate Obey in a late-game team fight. If you hit Wolfie, Sino, Ducky, or Wowie in any combination of those 4 with one shot from that ult, they're out. They're not going to be able to come back in. They're not going to fight you the way you want. Even with Yamoja's healing, they'd have to spend a little bit of time out of combat before they could really re-engage. But that's, I think, what you highlight and maybe what is most important here. If Sanguine don't get themselves a massive lead, which right now it's 1,500 almost, so they're climbing in terms of their gold lead, but if they don't get something big enough, then late game, I like Obey's comp a little bit better. Ducky is the only one that doesn't necessarily get better late game. I think Thor early on is still just as good, but late game, you know he's going to be finding those ults for setup. Sino hits harder. Wolfie will hit harder. Wowie, guess what? He's going to hit harder the longer the game goes. And so you get a lot of carry potential for them if this goes longer. And because of what we've typically seen out of Sanguine, that's usually their MO, is to have a little bit lengthier of a game that goes into the team fight stage. And so I think that plays into Obey's hand.
Ooh. Wrong you attempts to blink in onto inbound. There's a Sanctified Field. Catches the knockup onto Wolfie and the snipe through from Shinto. But a lot traded out in response. Ducky a few moments ago had used the Anvil of Dawn, but that's just back over in the solo lane. So you already see some of the early damage that this Sanguine team is able to pull out. First Typhoon of the game, first snipes of the game as well. But a Sanctified Field and now River's Rebuke down for Obey. Massive ultimates that are going to be missing for the next little bit of time.
Yeah, Wolfie, I mean, right now probably going to back because he has no mana, but otherwise kind of vulnerable. I mean, has the beads still, so Panatom may be looking to burn those down relatively soon. But once that Sanctified Fields is dropped, you know you have a little over a minute now. As a jungler, you can free roam in mid and not worry too much about what Oleron's going to turn in reply. And they're also doing, well, things like this. Look at the grouping on the mini-map. Yeah, cool, you're getting Totem of Cool. We're taking your red buff and your purple. Have fun with that. The farm is disappearing if you're Obey here. And I think that's going to be a little bit of an issue. Again, they have a late game comp, but the more farm that Sanguine steal away, the longer it takes for them to get to a position where they start hitting like a late game composition. And it's so far not amounting into too much. You can see a difference maybe in consumables, items being finished slightly faster here for Panatom, who now has that Brawlers online, or the Divine Ruin there for Shinto. So they're getting a little bit in terms of their itemization faster, but it's still something that is, I don't even want to use the term negligible, but manageable, right? Like, you get, it's unfortunate, but you can at least control it as you continue these next 5-10 minutes.
Look out for Sino. This is the threat, of course, that the Mercury always brings. And really Obey in general. You look at Thor, Ducky is going to drop down as I bring it up. The Anvil of Dawn plus the Sonic Boom provides sudden and immediate initiation. So even outside of some of the other big ultimates, namely the Oleron and Yamoja ults, I mean, this is going to be a game of vision as well for Sanguine, where you have to be hyper aware of maybe where this Thor is and where this Mercury is at the same time. You could be walking into a fight thinking that it's a 5v3, and then suddenly you have a double collapse. That's a tough game of chess, I think, that Sanguine are going to have to deal with.
Yeah, you need that restricted camera pitch turned off. You need to be able to look up into the sky to see if Ducky's hanging out up there.
Do people play that way?
You know, because I think it's the default setting, so there's a decent amount that you'll get dunked on by a Thor, and you just don't know that you can look up there. But hey, man, it's how it used to be. You have spacebar mapped to your free mouse, and you look up into the sky. That's the right way.
Oh,
to
turned off, you say? Okay.
Oh yeah. No, turn. You have to look up. You have to be able to
Yes.
look up. It's
Yes,
on by
yes.
default though.
Okay, good. I'm making sure we're on the same page there. I thought everyone had themselves locked. I think Lermy maybe plays with the locked camera.
Oh, she's
on.
wrong.
That's all by the wayside, though. Here's a good look at the Obey Alliance team fight, and Wrong You deleted here. Wow, he catches the ultimate as well. Wolfie does end up falling Netrioid with some snipes there, but it's a 2-for-1 trade in favor of Obey and Gore. We knew that's what this Obey squad could bring in these maybe close quarters jungle skirmishes.
And I think, honestly, Wolfie, like, you don't want your mid dying, but if you're trading him for Panatom, you're shutting down what is going to be a big factor for Sanguine early on, and he already got his ult out, he's already kind of dropped that utility. I think you can argue that it's worthwhile, especially getting the 2-for-1. It's going to be a little more unfortunate for Wolfie, but we've seen him come back from worse, so I think this is still a good trade overall for Obey. Plus, he gets to back and finish that Typhon's Fang, so he's only going to come back and hit a little bit harder, right? Just a forced reset for him to be able to come through. And now you're having to look where Sino is, finishes that Stone-Cutting Sword with what we've seen out of Mercury, more than likely going into crit next. Things like Wind Demon are going to be very big for him. Malice has been a big item as well. So keep your eyes on when those start getting picked up and when they finish for when this Mercury's power spikes are going to truly come through. And as always, I think keep an eye on Ducky, because we haven't gotten to see him make too many rotations, and we've seen a couple Anvil of Dawns, but none have really landed that impactful punch so far. I think that those are the big things coming up in the next few minutes that are going to make the difference for Obey, alongside Inbound continually getting these good Rivers Rebukes, or Wolfie finding a good Sanctified Field to lock down someone like Shinto or Wrong You to make sure they just can't quite get it done.
And Gore, I think the worrying trend here maybe already for Obey is that Shinto has edged himself out a 1-level lead in mid. Ducky, nice hammer there, but Panatom on the follow-up, the wall will delay any further aggression. Sino maybe pokes his head around this corner here, but Gore, it's a 2-level lead in mid for Shinto.
He's up.
A 2-level lead for Netrioid as well. Ducky looking for the dunk, but won't find Panatom farming his Harpies this time. An attempted invade. You just look really quickly at how Sanguine want to collapse on this one. Yarkor and Wrong You will move themselves in. Panatom around the side as well. Blink over, driving strike from Wrong You. Sino, he's been pulled back, but the excavate just wide. Sino can use the Sonic Boom defensively here if he feel like he needs to. Has it charged up, but he'll be slow on the trigger and walk himself away.
Inbound's rotated over. I think much quicker to react here for Sanguine, although it's been very telegraphed when Obey want to go in. It's, again, very difficult to miss when the Thor goes up into the sky. And again, it's another Anvil of Dawn that just doesn't lock anyone down. It doesn't really have the length that they need, or I guess the reach there to hit Panatom. And otherwise, it hasn't been used in as many fashions. We haven't seen a lot of team fight group ups from Sanguine on the right-hand side of the map.
Oh, Sonic Boom just wide of Wrong You here, but in the meantime, Sanguine gets the Gold Fury inbound in range, trying to do something with the River's Rebuke, but Netrioid would get the kill there. Wolfie in the mid lane has dealt with Wrong You. A 1-for-1 trade, both supports down. Sanguine, they might win this one because of the Fury.
Man, you know what I'm scared of at this point? It's actually Netrioid, of all things. I've highlighted almost everything on Sanguine except for him, and normally it's because at this point in the game, you're not supposed to be talking about the carries. They shouldn't be doing anything insane. But he's 3-0, and now it's opened up a lot of gank territory for his team.
This is going to be easy for Panatom, and then a knock-up onto Ducky just to confirm it. Gore, it's a 2-kill separated game right now.
It's a 3-level lead.
But Netrioid is pulling far and away ahead of Wowie on the other side. It's a 3-level lead, as you almost disgustingly point out there under your breath. He is 3-0. He's got the Icavale online, something that a lot of the hunters have started to really enjoy. And that's got to be the worrying trend here. That's why Sanguine are feeling confident enough maybe to pull that Gold Fury early just a few moments ago.
And you have to look at it. Net worth-wise, he's almost 2,000 gold ahead of what Wowie's been able to farm up. And when you look at the builds, their last items are in the same point, right?
Right.
But he's got that extra item. He's got a whole Icavale. built in between there. It was something when we were looking through that last game, specifically with a lead like this, it allows Netroid to just bully Wowie even more. He's going to be able to find more control over here. But again, because he has such a big lead, Wowie can't take the fight. He's timed also, he's pretty safe. He doesn't need to take the fight. He's just looking for farm. But it's enabled Panatom to not even care about this side of the map. If they're not going for a red buff or a purple buff invade, then who cares about this side? The Fury's down, Panatom, get out of here. Go to the right-hand side. See what you can do to help out Yarkor, to make sure Ducky doesn't have a good game or that Sino gets caught out. Because there's nothing to be gained on the left-hand side of the map. You've almost got everything until 3 minutes from now when that Oni Fury spawns.
And Gore, you know, a lot of it now becomes to keep, or turns into keeping Netroid safe in these fights. Always is, of course, with your hunters, but now that he's the one where most of this lead is, Ducky not able to walk in to take the Pyromancer away, so he'll walk back to farming over in solo. We started to see this rise of a fall of Vegas, I guess is how I want to word it, on some of the hunters there out of the long lane. Netroid is going to agree with some of that mindset, lock in that upgraded shell, maybe feels like you can get off a little bit more of your damage than you'd be able to at the Aegis.
Actually, I think I won't be surprised, I should say, if Wrong Yu also ends up grabbing an upgraded shell. There's a little bit of healing over there. I don't know if it's enough to warrant a Cursed Ankh. You've got a little bit coming from Oleron, a little bit coming from inbound. So there's that threat, but again, I don't know if you invest fully in the Cursed Ankh. When upgraded shell, it helps you against Wowie here, who's also getting forced out of his lane. It helps you against the Mercury and the Oleron.
Oh, Wowie has to dash away here. Netroid has stayed a little bit too long, or maybe it's inbound who's trapped in with Netroid. That's an easy kill for Shinto. And look at the immediate collapse from Sanguine. The communication is obvious there. Could have been a solo kill onto Wowie, but the rest of the team almost rotates over as an insurance policy, and they just sort of walk there. And Obey left wondering where everyone else was. They're going to be able to put out some pressure elsewhere on the map here. But Gore, this could be a tier 1 and a tier 2 tower over in the long lane. If Panatom and Sino start to duel it out, it could get worse. It's Aegis is traded on either side, but Ducky's here to save Sino. Makes it the 2v1. Yarkor is over, hanging off to the right-hand side. Sino Sonic booms away, a little bit of healing, but Yarkor will finally put the Mercury down. 1-for-1 trade, but a couple towers for Sanguine.
And a couple of ults burned there by Obey at the very end. So, ultimately, again, it's kind of unfortunate that you end up losing Panatom, but you get so much for it that you don't really care. You can shrug it off. At least Panatom should be laughing. Like you said, a tier 1, a tier 2, a kill over there in the duo lane, a kill over on right. Looks like another kill here in mid.
Oh my.
Shinto is just going to rip him down with the final judgment. It's just falling apart. Obey, at this point, it's not even because they aren't grouping up. It's because they can't group up. Everyone's staggered out in terms of kills. They can't get into the fight.
Oh my god, Shinto is level 18 at almost 17 minutes, by the way, so that seems good to me out of the mid lane. Now it's a tier 2 tower that Obey Alliance have to decide how much they want to put forth on the defensive end. At least half of the HP is missing here. Ducky just wide on the wall there, so Shinto will be able to back away. Gordy's got Divine Ruin, Spear of the Magus, and now Charon's Coin, so early penetration, flat, and percentage online for Shinto, so it's no surprise that this Thoth has been swinging big damage.
Yeah, it's going to be good luck for inbound Ducky, well, I guess everybody on Obey Alliance to try and live through that. I think that last final judgment may be showcasing more than not what kind of damage you can expect out of Shinto. This also should be a good showcase of it. The Oni Fury is just getting shredded by these two. And you had mentioned it, but they're both level 18 here.
Both now,
17 and a half minutes. They're beating the level per minute curve. And while it's going to slow down here, mainly because 20 is the max, you have a cap at some point, I think it's just amazing that they've been able to control it this much. 5 of the 8 kills split between the two of them as well. They've been a big factor for Sanguine controlling this game. And so now it's just how they translate it away from the laning phase into that Fire Giant. They've been finding picks, they've been winning 3v3s, but how do you do when the full team fight breaks off, especially if Ducky is able to land some good Anvil of Dawns and a grouping from Sanguine, that can still find a great path for Obey back into it. River's Rebuke, much better when you start grouping up 5v5. Same thing for Sanctified Fields. You can take a one-off 5v1 on Ducky every time and it'll be fine, but I want to know the 5v5.
And now it's an FG called on by Sanguine. Ducky, half HP on the back line here. Inbound rotates his way in as well. Knock up just wide from Wrong Yu here. River's Rebuke over the FG, but Sanguine have locked it down and gotten the kill. over onto inbound. Ducky has retreated here. In the meantime, Sino and Wowie push down the long lane, so that's a bit of a consolation prize for Obey. Maybe just send a couple in, try to steal it away. You get that gold you know you'll be able to get on the left side of the map.
I like the call from Obey. I think you have the two people who can contest it the best in the fight there. Unfortunately, they just didn't have the damage, or I guess the timing more so. Sanguine was able to read that. And they send one person back to defend a Phoenix with 4 ready to try and tear one down. They're still fighting at a disadvantage if you're Obey, but it's, 4v4. Inbound respawning. This might be a little risky for Sanguine.
Yeah, Yarkor has to push in the mid lane here, the only tower left standing for Obey. At least for now. You'll get right side Phoenix down to half HP, respawning slowly here. Are you laughing at Sino clapping? Because I'm trying to.
No, I'm Panatom's jungler brain going, I gotta go get that speed
Oh
buff.
no, but wrong, you locked down by Sino. He claps, and then he gets the kill. Dashes in, though. And now he's got Netrioid looking at him into Sanctified Field. Only Yarkor is caught in it, though. Frenzy popped by Obey Alliance, trying to turn around some of this damage, and Wowie is able to do so, but Shinto hits the stun from the back line. 3 versus 3 now on the defense from Obey. Rivers Rebuke locks in 2, and Ducky is there for some good spin to win damage. Wowie killing spree, but Shinto, he's matching it as well. Dunked on by Ducky, a double kill from Wowie, and only Yarkor left alive.
At the end of the day, they didn't get the Phoenix. Great defense from Obey. Great, maybe a little too strong of a word. They did the job, I guess is the better way to word it. The Phoenix is alive, and at the end of the day, they got more kills than they had deaths. So they are technically ahead out of that one, but they still have a pretty big mountain to climb, right? I mean, look at that gold lead, look at the experience that's still separating them. 3 members, level 20 on the side of Sanguine. Obey only has 1 now, that's Wowie that's ticked over. Still need to catch up mid, solo. Jungle and support have caught up to each other. And I can't believe this. I guess it's just the prot shed that Amaterasu brings that she's actually winning that trade. But still, a solo lane slap fight just happening in mid lane overall. But it is this attack speed a kind of build, or I guess attack-oriented build that comes through that we've been seeing a lot from this Amaterasu. The Berserkers, as well as this Frostbound coming through, it just makes it so oppressive to try and run away. And that's specifically because of the fact that, again, you're going to get attack speed and power if you drop below a certain threshold, but also all of your attacks are slowing. You know, Thor, it forces his hammer to teleport away. It forces Mercury to dash to get away. Olarun, poor Olarun's just not going to be able to do too much about it unless he wants to expend an Alter Relics. So I think it's going to give Yarkor some opportunities to jump into the backline and cause some real trouble for Obey, and it's just fun to watch when she's able to get back there and have a successful ult. Yarkor wasn't really able to do too much on that last Phoenix fight, so I want to say, especially if it's around a Fire Giant or a Fury, watch where this Amaterasu goes, or if it has to be around a Phoenix, if she can get to the backline even to make that difference.
Man, now Mantle of Discord as well for Yarkor.
That's a good item.
Talk about just being able to sit in the backline and then cause some damage. The lower health you get seems like a win-win situation here for me. Fire Giant buff only on Yarkor. Seems like Sanguine pivoting themselves towards this next Fire Giant buff. And Gore, you know, you look at the Sanguine team, and we know, you know, the sort of tried and true thing with these guys is that their late game, their team fighting, has always been their strongest suit. And I think that's something we can still say about these guys, but at least here in game number 1, these early game calls and the small skirmishes we've seen, the Sanguine team has transformed some of the communication in the team fights to like objective calls, things like that, and they've really stretched this lead out over the first 20 or so minutes, maybe more so now with the Primal Fury. Just a quick look at the map shows nobody from Obey will be there to answer. It's another good objective locked in for Sanguine.
It definitely is a team that, you know, they were pretty one-note in Phase 1. A lot of it was just, hey, if it's 20 minutes plus, they're going to win the team fights. That's how Sanguine are going to play this. Doesn't matter what happened for the first 20 minutes. Sometimes we'd see them win, sometimes we'd see them lose. We just knew once we hit a 20-minute mark that the grouping from Sanguine would be strong enough. Now they've got control of this early game. They've been getting a lot more consistent with it, although struggling still against those top team counterparts. If you don't want to fall too far in the standings, a match like this has to be virtually a 2-0. Obey aren't going to give it to you easily like they would have in Phase 1.
Wrongview, he's found inbound, and the Riptide will get inbound away. Yarkor looking for the lockdown, but it's a Rivers Rebuke to save the day, and inbound will walk away. A little bit of healing spread across the board. We'll keep this Umoja in the fight just a little bit longer. Sanguine did spend a lot, though, Goremizer. 3 ultimates there in that small mid-lane skirmish. especially with an FG right around the corner.
Yeah, I mean, just now respawning, and they're in the position where they kind of want to back. It's that awkward spot where you can't be too aggressive, and you have to stagger this out. You can see send 2 back, keep 3 here, and presumably when they return, maybe you're going to see a couple other members of Sanguine back up just to spend any gold they have and try to close that one out. But it's always a little iffy around a Fire Giant play. We can see everything, and so Obey might be able to bait somebody in if they started this up, but I kind of like the slow roll from both of these squads. Sanguine just didn't have the numbers for it. Obey, they don't have the power for it just yet. They're finally being able to make up for the level differences. In fact, even getting ahead there for Sino. But they still have to win a really solid couple of team fights to make things go in their favor.
Be maybe the biggest fight of the game so far. Rongyu playing Divider. Ducky moves his way to the right-hand side of the FG pit. Inbound knocked in. Sanguine, they've reset the Fire Giant here. No more damage being done to it, but inbound, you can't say the same for him. It's River's Rebuke defensively. A Sanctified Field over 2. Snipes on through from Shinto, but they haven't gotten the kill just yet. Yarkor will help out Netrioid in getting one. Shell doing wonders and keeping some of the backline alive. Rongyu brings Wowie right back in, and Panatom will get the kill. Wolfie has to burn the Aegis to walk himself away. To 2 for none. Obey Alliance limping back towards base.
But you gotta look at all those relics. I mean, those upgraded shells are really great. Again, it stops Wowie, Wolfie, Sino, all from really doing a majority of their damage, and it's enabled that Curse Ankh from inbound to stop the healing.
Oh, nice.
Doesn't mean they can't just outright box you, and that's what that crit's gonna be able to do for Sino, at least a little bit.
Sino stays alive here, but Rongyu goes down. It's a double kill from Ducky. But Netrioid, Yarkor, and Shinto have returned to the FG. What a call there by Sanguine. They realize they have the DPS despite an even 3 versus 3 fight over the horizon if Obey had checked to take that away. And Gore, look at who they've got it on. You got it on Shinto, Netrioid, and Yarkor. Yep. You gotta be thrilled with that.
Honestly, I think you're more than happy, right? I mean, like, Panatom, he's 2 and 4, and Rongyu 0 and 4. They've been able to come into this and have their impact on the game in their own way. But when you're looking at where are the levels we were talking about earlier coming from, where's the gold lead that we saw earlier coming from, it was Shinto and Netrioid that were really pioneering things. 4-1 and 6 there for the mid laner, 6-1 and 3 there for Netrioid. And Yarkor's 2-0 and 8. He's been having a great game on this Amaterasu, all things considered. So realistically, they're the best choices on Sanguine. If you had to choose 2 to not have it, this is the optimal 3. And you still get a frontliner who can use the sustain so they can dive towers a little bit easier, a mid laner who can now shred, let's say, inbound Ducky a little bit faster, or a little more damage on Sino, Wolfie, and Wowie. And Netrioid, that tier 2 tower doesn't exist to him. I don't think these Phoenixes will either. If he gets the opportunity to move up there with a minion wave, get those backdoor protections taken away until they can get something like an enhanced Fire Giant. Although, at least for right now, Sanguine feel like they control enough of the game that theoretically they should be able to close it out before they even have to think about something like that.
Agree, it does feel that way, but I think it also is important to look at Obey and how they were able to slow down the bleed that was happening early, and it wasn't even so much in the kills department. Sanguine were just a couple of kills ahead, but Obey behind levels and XP-wise for the large portion of this game. Now, XP, largely a non-factor outside of Inbound, who's just 1 level behind of Rongyu. Everyone else level 20, build starting to round out to that completed point as well for Obey. I mean, all things considered, Obey have caught up in most of the important departments here outside of maybe map pressure, where you see Sanguine still being the driving force there, but there's still a world gore. 27 minutes in, 2 exposed Phoenixes for Sanguine. If Obey's composition stands up to the defense, they could maybe get some map pressure right on back.
And you're looking at the kill timers now being long enough. If Obey win a fight really close to their base, then you probably just get a Phoenix off of it, but you push them back, you're able to chase them out, you could still potentially find an opening to win the game here. So one slip up from Sanguine is all it'll take. Unfortunately, it's the strengths that they're bringing into this that make things a little more doubtful, but I'm excited to watch Sino.
No.
Well, not anymore.
Oh, Panatom just pulls in Sino. No more Mercury. Is this the opening that Sanguine have been waiting for? Wonder what their response will be. And now a 5v4 on the mid. Ducky double dunk down in the mid lane. Panatom Yarkor being handled by the Thor just a little bit, but the damage being turned around. Typhoon just a tick of damage away. Over onto Ducky. It's a sanctified field onto the left, but Shinto will finally snipe down one. Wowie returns the favor. Inbound stays alive, but not for much longer. It's a double kill from Shinto. Sanguine are storming the base. It's Ducky against 3. He's going to have to work his way out here. 3 members still with the Fire Giant buff for Sanguine, but the Titan is melting way too fast. Sanguine walk away with game 1.
There's a lot of things I think that you can highlight and maybe need to shuffle around if you're Obey there. But honestly, there's not much you can say outside of the fact that Shinto and Netrui just had one hell of an early game, and they just translated that lead into such an oppressive, controlling factor late game that those two, even at the very end, were part of the main reason Sanguine win. So maybe you shuffle it up and try to take away the control, ban the ROM or take it away, ban the Thoth even if you're able to before he's able to pick it on the side of Sanguine. But there's maybe something that you just have to have something a little more early game oriented in the jungle. Mercury, he's great in those late game scenarios as long as he's able to live longer than 2 seconds. But in the early game, he doesn't have as big of an impact. So maybe shift that around in the jungle and get Sino in those fights a little faster.
Well, and Gore, we loved Obey's composition as far as initiation potential between Ducky and Sino, disengage potential with the River's Rebuke and the Sanctified Field. It just felt too clean from Sanguine, I think, throughout this game, and that's exactly what Sanguine and Sanguine fans have been wanting to hear us say for a little while here. So a great start to this set for Sanguine. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, the desk will break down game 1.
So far gone. Oh, another
Well, I've lost Mackenzie. You see, she lost her ranked game and raged at her teammates. So she had to go take a walk and is cooling off a little bit. And Obey Alliance also lost in this game, Mifflin, and it wasn't exactly close. It didn't seem particularly competitive for the majority of it. And a lot of our discussion coming into this game, inbound on this Yamoja, he had to prove that he could play it. What did you see? Was it enough for you?
Look, I don't want to make a definitive blanket statement, but I'm going to do it because I mean it when I say it. Inbound, Bobby, however you want to refer to him, does not have a Yamoja. I don't want to see him on this pick almost ever again. I saw exactly one good ultimate throughout the entirety of that game, and it was on that right side Phoenix defense, and it was a good ultimate, but you're going to need more than just one throughout the entire course of a match. But let's not use this to take away from Sanguine's well-played game. I mean, Panatom has a pretty decent game despite having a ton of pressure put on him throughout the jungle. Yarkor was able to match the rotation path of Ducky almost every single time, which is impressive because Ducky has a global ultimate. And then Shinto and Netrioid's early game, as Gore said, was nearly perfect.
Shinto and Netrioid just got so far ahead. in this game. Both Panatom and Shinto ended up doubling or more than doubling their counterparts' damage on the other side.
Oh, watch this.
Yeah, this was cool, by the way. And by cool, I mean very, very good for Sanguine Esports and very, very bad for Obey Alliance, as is usually the case with Hercules. Oh, we get it from the other angle. Nice. We kind of get the double on this one, which is appropriate for the double push coming from Rongyu. Sanguine got a whole lot of good stuff in this draft. Really, the only pick that we had question marks about was this Susano, and Panatom looked very, very comfortable on it, had a solid game on that assassin.
He did, and he was under pressure the entirety of the time. Sino was on his speed buff with Ducky dunking him almost nearly at his Phoenix, and it didn't really matter. Panatom was never truthfully behind, and I think that this is exactly what I want to see from Panatom in the future. Keep going to these comfort picks. You don't necessarily have to play whatever is triple S on the Reddit tier list. Play what you're best at, and you're going to look really good on it. Panatom makes a good showing today.
Agreed, and that's been kind of the opposite of what Sanguine has really done for the majority of their players, but I think it just kind of happens that the Sanguine players are really, really good at the characters who are in that top tier right now in the meta. If Panatom isn't, that's okay. Give him stuff that he can carry on. Susano might be added onto that list. So we go to game number 2. Obey chooses to be in that first pick position, which surprises me a little bit here, Mifflin, because if I'm Sanguine, I am definitely leaving open Yamoja again in game 2.
It feels so bad to say. I don't want people to think we're BM and Bobby. He's definitely good at the support role, but just maybe not that Yamoja pick. He's got a Ymir, he's got an Erling Shen, he's got a Kuzenbo. Maybe try and prioritize getting those picks for yourself. But when you're in a position like that and you've already shown that potentially the best character in the game is not one that fits into your god pool, exactly as you said, if I'm Sanguine, I'm leaving Yamoja open, and they got Amaterasu and Rama as well. Obey's only going to be able to take one, and I think if they're left in the exact same ban position as they were in game 1, Obey's likely going to pick up that Ram in the first slot. Do you really want Sanguine having Amaterasu and Yamoja? I don't think so.
I don't think so. You're going to be put in some difficult spots, though, if you aren't going to take it in that first pick position. Could very well end up being a Yamoja ban here for Obey after their 2 mid-lane Shinto bans, though clearly that didn't affect Shinto too much. He's still hard carried in damage on the Thoth, so things like Hell and Persephone, good bans, yes, but maybe not as effective as Obey would have liked. So far, it's all been the same in the ban department. Cupid and Sobek once again here by Sanguine.
Cupid and Sobek, strong bans overall. Here's where we're going to need to see the adjustment from Obey, but it is going to be the Hebois, so Sanguine now gets to make the decision. Do we want to see whether or not Inbound is willing to retry his hand at that Yamoja pick? And it's hard to say, right? The mechanical display that we saw in the Yamoja wasn't overly impressive, but it did start off with a first wave kill inside of that long lane. It's not very easy to play an aggressive Guardian from behind like that, but it is going to be the Arachne ban from Sanguine. We'll see whether or not Obey decide to try their hand again. But I'd much prefer them see just pick up the Rom here. Just take it for Wowie. We know he's comfortable on that pick. It's very safe inside the long lane. It's going to open up some options for Inbound to be a little bit more comfortable.
Feel like that could be the direction here for Obey, but then you're giving up like Yamoja Ama. And even though the Yamoja isn't as good for Bobby as I think a lot of people would like, it's still keeping it out of Rongyu's hands at the very least. Is there an argument for taking it just as another pseudo ban against Rongyu?
There is, but we're going to need to see more. I mean, if you're doing it exactly to ban against Sanguine, just ban it. Are you really that worried about the hell? I mean, Persephone, obviously a very strong pick, but Yamoja is the strongest god in the game. She brings healing. She has the most CC lockdown. She's got unlimited cooldowns and nearly unlimited mana when she channels that ultimate. Yamoja is so absolutely strong, but she does have that high skill floor to be very effective on this pick. Sanguine, likely going to do exactly what they did in game 1, pick up the Amaterasu and the Ram. I don't see any reason why not.
Exactly. Why wouldn't they? It is crazy that Ama has been played as much as she is, a 43% pick rate, and her win percentage is above 60. That is unheard of.
Nuts.
For a very popular god. Think she might be pretty good. I don't know. Just kind of the feeling that I'm getting every time I watch it, especially when it's in Yarkor's hands like it will be here in game number 2. I do understand Obey's bad position, though, in these picks and bans, though, Miff. It's that if you really don't want Sanguine to have one of the 4 gods of Hell, Persephone, Hebo, Yemoja. Wolfie is not really a Hell, Persephone, or Hebo player, at least that he's proven at a high level quite yet. So if you have to take one for yourself, I guess Yemoja is the best of those options, but ideally you'd like to be able to not have to worry about 4 different gods that you absolutely can't give over. I just don't really think Hebo's in that same category as someone like Yemoja, despite his high pick rate as of late. Obey clearly of a different mindset as they go back to the Heimdall Thor once again, just like they did in game number 1.
And the strengths are still there. Heimdall, one of the safest gods inside of the long lane. Thor, able to rotate out early. I'd like to see Ducky put a little bit more focus on that 3v3 in mid. Instead, we saw him using that global ultimate a little bit more often towards that aggressive jungle gank playstyle. If Pentatom's on back camps or speed buff, Ducky was pretty constantly looking to meet up with Sino and try and gank him out there. But I think the 3v3 should be the strength of this draft, especially considering Yemoja is in your 3v3 against a mid laner that doesn't have a jump. Thoth should just be a sitting duck. We're not seeing any phantoms coming out. He's going to be stuck in the water if we're able to find a nice ultimate. I agree to your point that it is hard for Obey if they are having to ban out all of these picks, that it doesn't fit into the god pool necessarily. But that doesn't mean that they can't slot this Hebo elsewhere if they want to strip it away. I know that Sino can play this pick. I've seen him perform on it in ranked consistently. I know that Hebo isn't the most mechanically demanding god. You could have Wolfie take him. I mean, as long as you're able to hit the water spout, that's the hardest thing Hebo needs to do. I really do think that Obey could have shifted this up, especially considering the performance we saw in Yemoja in game 1.
Yeah, bring it over here. Yeah, did you catch my eye roll for the hardest thing Hebo needs to do is hitting the 3? I can reprise it for you. Here you go. Say it again, Miff. Go ahead.
Hebo, the hardest thing he has to do is land water spout. Oh my god. Look, he's a jungle pick too, aggro. I know what this god does. Oh, the positioning.
Sure, man.
He's got short range abilities.
Oh, sure, man. Definitely, yeah. Real tough. Yep. Junglers, sure. Same bans for Sanguine this time around in Ra and Erlong Shen, and same bans for Obey in both Kuzenbo and Nemesis. Salty run-back territory here, potentially, for both of these sides. We saw the Hercules pick here for Sanguine in game 1, and why wouldn't they just go back to the Hercules, put the ball in Obey's court on if they want to change something up, and that's exactly what they'll do.
Is this the right VOD? Are we doing the right P's and B's here? They're almost exactly the same. Exactly the same. I said almost.
They are.
I didn't mean it. This Hercules, again, is a very smart pick. I would have liked to see Obey try to shift up the bans a little bit, just because Hercules has such a strong counter matchup in the Heimdall. Oh, your knock-up immune doesn't matter. I'll punch you and stun you. We saw what his aggression is able to do. Heimdall's strength is the safety inside that lane, and Hercules removes the majority of it. And then going back to this Oleron as well, Sanguine showed that their comp is really good at diving. Wolfie didn't get a ton of value out of this pick. It seems interesting that he's willing to go back to it.
Miff, I do not remember your old Eager team being particularly fond of the salty run back. Was that something that you guys wanted to do? Do you think that that works as a player? Because I hated it. I never wanted to do a salty run back.
No, I just lost on that. I'm not blaming me. It couldn't be me. It's got to be the picks. Let's do something else. It at least was my mentality around it, but these are the pros. They know what they're doing. I know that Obey's strategy has worked for them in the past. Each one of these individual picks, barring maybe the emoji, is a very good comfort pick for each one of these guys. So I think that the draft could work out if they're able to clean up that early game just a little bit.
And it is the full draft, exactly the same for game number 2 as it is for game number 1. I know there are 2 people that I feel a little bit bad for on this, and that's Dave and Gormizer, because casting the exact same 10 gods early games is not always easy. I just don't... Did you think it was just execution error in game 1, Miff? Because I'm not so sure that it was. I think it might have been more than that.
Yeah, there is still the weaknesses of Obey's draft is the fact that they've got an incredibly squishy, largely immobile backline without a very strong front line to create space for them. That weakness is still there, but Obey's draft is very good at winning better. If they get off to a strong early game, Thor out of the solo will expand your lead. A Yemoja from ahead will expand your lead. Each one of these gods is very strong at pushing a good early game. It's just that the comeback mechanics, the late game, even 5-on-5 engagements, that's where I'm worried about this draft. Take a peek over at Sanguine's draft. it's standard Smite. There's no real glaring weaknesses here. You got an AoE mage, you've got tanky frontliners, an assassin that can 100 to 0 people, and then a Rom. I mean, I don't need to sing the praises of Rom. Rom's nuts.
He's been doing well all phase, and we'll see if that continues here. Obey looking to do the exact same thing, but better in game number 2.
Well, game number 2 between Sanguine and Obey, and Gore on the desk, we're talking about how Susano belongs in the jungle, and a pick that I also think you could say that, oh wait, that's exactly what I said in game 1, so we're going to start with a different pivot here, I think, before we head into game number 2. I mean, I think I'm not necessarily surprised. It's always surprising, I think, if a team is willing to rerun the exact same thing they just lost on. But I think if you look at Obey's draft, I mean, it literally is the same thing, and I still hold true that this composition has the ability to team fight really well. It's just sort of some of the early game, maybe individual outplays, jungle pressure, maybe specifically over on the right side of the map. Wrong you, of course, you get the double push in the left side of the map to set up for kills. Those small things is really what set up those dominoes. And obviously that's what Obey feel like they need to change here for game 2.
Yeah, I think this is a draft, like, when you get, first off, one team running all 5 picks back is kind of rare. Getting all 10 picks to happen the exact same is always interesting. But I think Sanguine, if it just worked and you picked it for X reason last time, you're going to pick it again for the same reasons. But it is going to be watching wrong you, because how often are you going to get a blink 2-man push that results in first blood in this lane? And how often is that then going to lead to Netrioid having a 3-level lead over Wowie for a majority of the game, right? It's things like that that I think are going to be different paced. It gives Sino the opportunity to maybe get a little more hands-on for the squad earlier, shut down someone like Yarkor, maybe try to chase out Panatom or Shinto just a little more often to slow this mid laner down. So the options are open for this early game. It's just where you can find the pressure, and right now it looks like it's the dual lane again.
Well, remember, Wowie pre-beads to just that in game 1, and Rongyu held off. The patience was there before pushing Wowie right back into death. Inbound was there, but he survived. Gore, there is a notable change. Inbound running Sprint instead of the Shell, upgraded Sprint at that, instead of the Shell that we saw Inbound with in game number 1. So there's a little bit of a difference. Inbound maybe feeling like the Sprint could solve some of those early game issues.
I think it'll definitely help you get away in a lot of instances where maybe things are going to be a little worse off for you. But I also think, again, you go back to some of those upgraded shells, which I think are just going to, once again, level 12, watch Shinto, watch Netrioid. They're going to pick them up. They're not going to have any issue with it either. It will help give them haste on the side of Obey to then try to bop those shells off and get some of that damage done a little bit quicker, because right now I'm still looking at the same late game issues that Obey are going to be struggling with. So that's where I think they're going to have to shift things up a little bit, knowing that Sanguine could quite literally run the exact same game back, same itemization, same relics, and for the most part still find themselves success. They might not find it as stompingly good as they did last time around, where they're, level 18, 16 minutes into the game, but they do still have potential to find a lot of these kills. And I think early on, it's still wrong. You just keep watching him. With that blink done for another minute and a half, he's going to be waiting on it, but he could still find the good old knock-up push that we know Hercules loves.
Well, Rongyu looking for it on inbound here. 1 level lead for both Netrioid and Rongyu. Panatom level 3 as well. A bit too far pushed back. Gore, I guess that is the downfall of a lane where you're going to have this much pressure pushing Wowie at inbound in under tower. You're obviously denying a little bit of gold if some of those tower shots can ring through, and maybe makes them feel a little bit more comfortable to step up later on. Also sets you up for potential jungle pressure in from behind, and kind of mitigates really maybe what Panatom is able to do here. You're not wanting to tower dive, 2.5 minutes into this game. But you do want to do this. You want to get the push-pull over onto inbound. He'll eat about half of his HP before dashing away, so now the Emojas can have to rely on some of that sustain.
Still opens up potential invades, although Wolfie and Sino already looking at their red buff, so that's not going to happen. Purple buff doesn't seem like they have enough on the side of Sanguine. So it is slowing it down, and that was another big factor. Last game, actually about 5 minutes in, Sanguine had 1,000 gold lead already, and part of that was the first blood bounty, but another part of it was the invades they were able to accomplish. Now, 400 gold, 300 experience, nothing that you can't shrug off. And with Sino hitting level 5, he's already looking to get a little more impactful, but it is much like you said, Rongyu, Netroid, Panatom, not able to get aggressive over here in the duo lane. Last time, Panatom didn't even have to come over here because Netroid was so far ahead. Here, it's almost necessary. They're keeping on par with Inbound and WoW, even locking them down a little bit more, maybe straying a little bit further ahead, but not enough. That Sanguine are, I would argue, comfortable and would find a gank unnecessary. I think Panatom is more than welcome on this side of the map right now. But you maybe want to burn those beads, and if it takes longer than 40 seconds, maybe that sprint again, just to make sure Panatom's going to be able to find a more secure knock-up with that storm, as well as maybe an easier pull back into the fight on someone who's running away.
Look at Sino. He's underneath the Tier 1 tower now for Obey, considering a Sonic Boom down the lane. We didn't see really any of this at all in game number 1. He's going to work his way forward. Trigger is pulled. That one's caught out onto Rongyu. Tossed back right into the stun. Oh, but well timed by Rongyu to dash away. Maybe keeps the Hercules alive, but there's a good Rivers Rebuke for Inbound. First blood for Sino. Exactly what we wanted to see moving on in here into game 2. But how about the return gank from Panatom? Typhoon has caught an Inbound, and now both junglers have gotten involved.
It's unfortunate they're not able to find a little bit more support for support. Still favors Obey because they got that first blood bounty. That's going to be big for them. Sino as well, being able to showcase something only Mercury can do. No one else can gank you from the lane and be in lane with you and still find that kind of positioning. Only Mercury is able to do that one. Maybe a Thor if you aren't watching him ult. Speaking of watching him ult, I mean, this is incredibly close between these two lanes.
Yeah. And Yarkor does not have his ultimate where Ducky does. I mean, there's burst
Ducky,
potential
do it.
here
Get
from
greedy.
this Thor.
Go
I know,
in,
that's
baby.
what I'm saying, man. I thought he was going to do it. He hit the hammer to tap a second ago, and I thought there's a world where he gets hyper-aggressive in that moment, but elected not to. Smart. Blue buff coming off of cooldown soon. Panatom likely on that side of the map somewhere close by. I think smart play from Ducky. And I do think, you know, we've already seen what we wanted to see from Sino in game 1 that we did not see. And this is what we wanted to see from Ducky as well. Initiate some fights with the Anvil of Dawn. Panatom locked in, dashes away. Sino on the attempted read is going to get locked down by Yarkor, who might be able to turn around some big damage here. And now the Amaterasu is on the board. And it's Obey Alliance who are searching for that fight.
So Panatom, I want to say there's maybe a little bit of luck, maybe the cooldowns, whatever, that helps him get out of there. Yarkor, that is one of the best uses of that silence that you can have, is being able to catch that Mercury out while he's charging his ult. Sino never had the option to get out of that one once that was connected. And I think that's just heads up. Yarkor being able to read that and apply that in the right moment at the right time, and being able to just find that silence is going to be clean for them. Gets that kill online. And this Mercury, which, again, when I highlighted at the end of the game, was what I wanted to see a little more active in the early game. He's been doing that, but if you start to die off, if that happens one, maybe you can be lenient and say 2 more times, then you're almost in the exact same spot as you were before.
Right, remember, it wasn't a massive kill lead that Sanguine had. It was sort of the intangibles, the stripping away of the jungle, some extra farm, where Sanguine really made their money in game number 1. But already, again, I sort of echo a small improvement for Sino, at least just finding the gank over into the long lane. And it's going to open up maybe some fighting here. This is a good old 2v2 that Inbound wants. It's the dash away from Rongyu, and then the tremble from the Rivers Rebuke just wide. Beads used from Netroid, ultimate for Inbound, and that's about it here on this skirmish.
I think good call overall. I mean, Sanguine are able to walk out of that one without having to worry too much about the ult from Inbound, and that's where I think Mifflin's eyes and Aggro's eyes, the desk as a whole, were looking more at Inbound than anybody else on this squad as to what this emoji can bring. And for good reason. Obey have not played any emoji, save for that last game. It's not been big on their list. So we'll have to see if they can try to turn this performance around and pick her up a little more, either not more often, but just have her be more useful when they do pick her up. But as of now, I'm still looking at Sino, Wolfie, Ducky as maybe the 3 on the other side of the map to control the flow of the game. Ducky specifically, you run back to that game. What was it, last week? Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. I believe it was last week against Radiance, of all things, where he was solo lane Thor and absolutely having the time of his life on that and able to carry everybody on his back.
Oh, Netrioid no beads, but Sino no good on the ultimate. Like the mindset, though. Smart play, realizing that the Sanguine long lane may be a little bit more susceptible, but now Panatom will try to pull back in. Sino won't work. Immediate collapse, though, from Sanguine. Answered back. Oh, my God. Inbound, not able to play. A Sanctified Field on from range. Panatom has the damage as well. Sino is going to pull one back. It's a 2-for-1 trade as it all stands. They are quite low, Gore. They want to stick around Obeidu and try to take this purple buff, but I think smartly back themselves away.
Also, Dave, I'm going to catch myself. I lied to you. It wasn't the first time they had played you.
How could
They
you?
played her twice so far this year outside
You
of
and
this
I have
weekend.
each had one today.
And, well, they lost with her both times. That's why I didn't remember it, because it was non-memorable overall. So Inbound, hopefully trying to slot a win on that one. Otherwise, they're going to be 0 for 4 throughout the year on this. But in regards for what we're seeing, Sino, I think, is using this ult way more than we... First off, I think twice now that we haven't gotten to see him use it in Game 1, because in Game 1, you'd hear the clap and then nothing, and then the clap and then nothing. He would never go in with it. Now, again, showcasing that you can absolutely lock people down, although still a little bit red in that last scenario. I think it's going to be an interesting shift. Finish the stone cutting. Looks like he's going to be going for a shuriken now, so he'll be able to find some crit online. If he keeps going for Shinto, that's going to be good kills.
Panatom just sort of walks at Ducky here. Nice use of the hammer to get away. Some early pressure. Not really early, I guess, at this point. Early to mid pressure from Panatom over in the long lane. Yarkor about a half-level lead over Ducky up to that point. Gore, there had been a lot more sort of skirmishing and pressure placed on the long lane, or the short lane rather, around this point in game number 1, and there's a pretty obvious shift really from both teams over towards this left side. Because remember, Sanguine, of course, we've talked about Netrioid getting ahead, but what that converted into were those early Furies and things like that. So I think across the board, Sanguine, they have this 1,000 gold lead up to this point, a couple of kills as well. But at least as far as slowing down Sanguine, Obey have answered back, I think, well, all things considered after game 1.
I think now we're looking at the levels, and actually we're looking at Sino again.
Sino is right back to the long lane, and Netrioid times it perfectly. Stays alive. Wrong, you tanky enough to keep himself in this fight. Now Panatom charges up the ultimate. Will catch a little bit onto Sino on the back end of the fight. 3 versus 3. Shinto rotating over from mid as well. How much more can Sanguine poke down? Inbound tries to pull Panatom back in. But Panatom is going to escape here nonetheless. 3 versus 3. You thought it was centered around that mid lane, but Gore, it's been anything but. It's been long lane 3 versus 3 for the first 11 minutes.
Oh, and this is what I was looking for. Ducky making a big rotation. Your cores come out from that solo island as well. And that's opened up this Gold Fear. You were just highlighting how Sanguine had a lot of control on this. And I don't know that Obey have it guaranteed for him.
Ducky's up, Ducky's down in the back line. Oh no, Sanguine have taken it away, and they've gotten a kill onto Inbound. Wolfie drapes over the Sanctified Field, but it buys nothing. Sanguine get the Fury, they get a kill. Now they're going to try to chase down onto Ducky. Panatom, not with the cooldowns he's been looking for, still a tier 1 tower there as well, so it looks like Ducky will stay alive. But that's a winning fight through and through for Sanguine.
Dave, they did everything right there. I don't even know what to... I mean, Obey did almost everything you could in order to stop that from getting taken away. Even the Sanctified Fields rolled out. Maybe slightly too late is the difference there. And Sanguine just walk up and steal that one. That is very unfortunate. A plateau that has now been broken and fallen apart. Obey, I think we're very far ahead. I was going to say we're starting to hit these levels. Level 12 there at first overall for the mid laner. Shinto now has that upgraded shell, and I think you should keep your eye on Rongyu, Netrioid, both level 10, now taking over to 11. So what they're going to pick up when they hit that moment, because I think those are going to be where Sino starts to hit a little bit less often, because all of a sudden you have these block stacks, or Wolfie is going to hit less often because these block stacks, same thing for Wowie. So their window of opportunity to maybe pull a lead away disappearing for Obey, and now having to go back into it the same way they did last game for some of those late game team fights. They didn't quite go well in game 1. We'll have to see if they can change it in game 2. And honestly, they're not going too well here, as Yarkor and Rongyu both able to walk up. That dazzling offensive, that CC immunity that we typically highlight as being important, something like a Vamana that can just run straight through Sanctified Fields. Dazzling offensive lasts just long enough to get you through there, so it didn't even matter that Wolfie had the ult.
Well played by Yarkor there. I've seen a couple steals from Amaterasu so far here today, or at least this weekend. So Sanguine absolutely happy. And of course it comes at a time where I'm saying that Obey have slowed down Sanguine. Maybe this is a chance for Sino and Ducky to find a small advantage, but they are doing almost no damage to this Amaterasu. They've had to call inbound. Sonic Boom from close range, wide. Yarkor stunned down, well timed by Ducky, and finally the kill comes through. But how much have you spent? That Panatom can now rotate in. Shinto snipes down from range. Ducky, I think, just avoiding damage here. Will crash back down to earth. Gore, it's a 1-for-1. It's just gonna get worse. Inbound is locked in.
Yeah, they're going to be able to find the Sanctified Fields, though, and that's a good spot for Wolfie to try and turn some damage. But look at this. I mean, they hardly touch Ron.
Panatom pulls back in a couple, and now Shinto's there on the follow-up damage, and he's waiting on the other side of Ducky. It's a double kill for Shinto. What a fight for Sanguine, and Gore at 14 minutes in. There's the fear that this one may have just broken the game open.
Well, I'll say, Yarkor, absolutely fine trading that one out. And honestly, you're looking at the difference. This time last game, we were looking at Shinto, who had a ridiculous slash line and experience lead. Same thing for Netroid, who had a ridiculous slash line and experience lead. Well, right now, they've shifted all of that. They don't have quite the same lead everywhere, although a 1-level lead there for the carry, 2 levels there in mid. But it's 2 levels in the jungle now as well. Panatom didn't necessarily have a bad game, didn't have a great game on this Susano last game. Now he's 4-0-5, absolutely tearing through Obey Alliance. He got his warm-up game out of there, right? First game jitters completely covered as he's coming into us. They're leading 9-3. The gold lead is 6,000 thanks to that Pyromancer. And they are just winning these team fights convincingly at this point.
Yep.
I mean, locking down inbound pretty easily, ignoring Sanctified Fields from Wolfie even though they're well placed. They just are doing, again, everything they can on Obey. It's the fact that Sanguine are reading it and just outplaying it.
Well, maybe there's a collapse here onto Netroid, but be careful what you wish for inbound in Wowie, because Panatom is here as well. Wowie uses the beats, but Panatom is just going to wait out the ultimate from inbound, and now he's dashed in. This Yamoja has nothing else but one final Riptide to stay alive. It could be enough. See what Rongyu's able to do here, and of course he's going to hit those. Back it goes inbound, and one more kill will fall over to Sanguine. Sino was close by, but he has nothing to say about it. At least Wolfie in the mid lane is likely going to get himself a tier 1 tower.
And I do want to give some credit inbound. One of the things that's incredibly hard and easy to forget is very hard is how placing those Riptides is going to be effective. We see it all the time from PBM where it's great, that it's easy to get confused about it. But now Sino's looking for a 1v1. It's not going too well, though.
Sino wanted this. Sino ulted in behind Sanguine and then was just left alone once that tier 2 tower dropped down. Now Wowie and Ducky make their way over. Maybe thought there's a little bit more coming sooner. Wowie is going to dash away here, and Ducky will do the same as well. Actually, Wolfie on the backline has gotten a kill on Netroid. It was the Sanctified Field that helped him out there, but now Shinto, for the 4th time this game, will draw blood on Obey. Nothing but a win, I think, here for Sanguine. A couple more towers, a couple more kills, and feels a little disjointed from Obey.
Yeah, it feels like they're fighting for the sake of fighting in that last one, as opposed to grouping up and maybe taking it as a team fight. Otherwise, they might be able to at least have grouped up, lost the tier 2 tower, but maybe contested an Oni Fury, right? Put some pressure onto a Fire Giant. Now, I mean, you're still waiting on Wolfie to respawn. Sino just got back because he ran in on his own. And it kind of felt like a grudge match there from Obey, which admittedly, the whole thing kind of feels like a grudge match from Obey. You don't lock in the same 5 picks on both sides unless you think that it was something you could do to maybe open up the door a little bit more. But one of the things I think that I saw, and again, is very misleading, when you watch Aurora, PBM, these top supports play Yamoja, they're always hitting these Riptides they place down. You run it back to that initial fight, that initial engagement in duo lane, and Inbound had almost boxed Netroid in, but had never actually scooped him up with one of the Riptides. And unfortunately, I think that's just showcasing the difference. If he had been able to hit one of those, or if he hadn't placed them at all, he would have had more Omi there towards the end to maybe escape, keep his life. That's just going to be the difference between some of your top-tier Yamojas and what you'll see from everyone else.
Obey have to run for the hills here. Yarkor forces out a couple pairs of beads. It's Sino and Wolfie who used those, and they took about half of their HP. Ducky in, so is Sino. There's some setup from Obey, but instead Sanguine able to back themselves off and turn plenty of damage right back around. Inbound, Ducky, both gone. Now Wowie might suffer the same fate. He'll have to use the ultimate. to escape away from this one. Sino pulling back a little extra farm, and Sanguine, they slow things down and pick up 2 more kills.
I don't know if we got a replay of it. I honestly don't think of why you would want it, but Sino there, you can see the collective ults wanting to go in. Hey, Ducky, I'll dunk down. Sino, you'll ult in. That's the conversation.
That's what we
Ducky
thought, right?
lands, throws up the wall. Sino hits the wall with his ult, as opposed to being able to lock anything down. So they immediately there end up in a position where they did not get the CC and the damage they wanted, and that's a bad way to start. Now, Yarkor, I don't even think you have to play guard and bully here for the Fire Giant. I appreciate the effort, though, because he might still be able to bully.
Level 20.
4-level lead over this jungler, and over Ducky as well. At this point, if you're Obey, you're really going back to last game, 19 minutes in. You want Sanguine to make a misplay around a Phoenix so that you can stay alive in this game before things start looking too dire.
That's a level 20 Yarkor at 19 minutes into the game. Shinto
Yeah, that's good.
just trying to tick over to level 20 before the 20-minute mark. At any rate, he's far and away ahead of his counterpart on the other side. The Yarkor with that obnoxious Amaterasu build is just sort of walking at Wolfie here. The dazzling offensive. Wolfie has nothing to say about it. Ducky was there, but he says, sorry, bud, I'll back myself away. The 3-stack on top of the Sanguine scoreboard down there is running this game. Rongyu is absolutely throwing his name in the hat as well, and Netruid's been a fantastic role player for this squad. But this has been a spearheaded game by those top 3, Yarkor, Panatom, and Shinto.
I will say, a great support game when you're 1-1 and 11, where you're just like, yeah, I got a kill, I died once, but I'm really setting things up. You're happy, but like you said, right now Yarkor leading the way, still doing so now as he beats up Donkey.
Frenzy popped by Inbound. Panatom will get the kill onto Wowie. Some small stuns on the back line there by Inbound. Ducky up down, but nobody on the other end to receive the stun. Shinto no snipe, but Inbound will just fall to Yarkor nonetheless. This might have GG written all over it, depending on how Sanguine want to maybe force the issue. It's a mid-lane Phoenix being looked at. Panatom caught in the Sonic Boom, but Sino immediately has to dash away. Gore, they're going to listen to you and turn their eyes towards the Phoenix instead.
And that's exactly what you need to do. Sino's just trying to pull you away from the base, keep this bird safe. Now you've got your objective. Honestly, they still have 20 seconds without members responding for Obey, and they have minions.
Oh, and they've gotten the kill onto Wolfie. Dire straits for Obey Alliance here. Sanguine, 5 members with the Fire Giant buff. A respawn in a couple of seconds from Wowie and Inbound will send Obey running. But Gore, they got what they came for. A left side Phoenix, a mid lane Phoenix, a few more kills.
Yeah.
Fire Giant still has 1 minute and 45 seconds left for these guys. And they're going to get the Pyromancer to get back faster. We were worried about maybe a small, I'm not going to call it a throw, but a small speed bump of a siege in game 1. We did not see the same issues here for Sanguine.
Not at all. I think being able to read where Sino goes in, and again, just pulling off of that and recognizing, like, well, he's a lone Mercury. What's he going to do? Kill your backline that still have their shell, by the way? They didn't even have to use their relics, both of them with beads? I mean, I think you could have even risked being more aggressive there. Honestly, Sanguine, that was win state. I think they still had a few seconds. Wowie was just respawning, which made things a little questionable, but Wolfie was dead. Inbound was still out for a few more seconds. I think they could have closed out the Titan, but I think they're going for the safe play, which is always the smarter play. Slow it down a little bit. Don't risk your game over wanting to just end it faster. Instead, get your minions, get this Phoenix, and pretty much KO Obey.
There you go. Maybe a dunk down onto Netrioid will help, but Netrioid burns both of the actives and stays alive. Look at the damage. Returned around by Panatom. Sino dashes into the backline and gets the kill here, but it's immediately answered back. Netrioid for Sino. Right side Phoenix being looked at. Inbound, knocked up and locked down. Rampaging is Yarkor here. The third and final Phoenix might fall in just a moment, likely just around the corner.
You're seeing the downside of not having your Hunter around when the Phoenix is up. You have a lot of people who can kill that Phoenix. They ought to be within melee range. Or Shinto, who's not going to be able to hit enough, but that's 3 Phoenixes down, and they've got fire minions down.
Or they might just want to walk this one in. No Netrioid. You have to look at that. Rongyu half HP as well. They're going to have to play this one smart, though they definitely still have the advantage. Wolfie made the mistake of standing anywhere near Shinto and took half of his HP, but luckily the Fountain close enough by that he's able to back off. A bit split up here, Sanguine. Ducky found the stun, but not much more. It looks like Sanguine are going to back up and wait for the full 5.
What I like about the read of that is Wolfie was in his base. I think that's just one of those moments where Wolfie had the problem of existing where Shinto didn't want him to be anymore. But they're playing the waiting game right now. Netroid just respawned, so he'll be able to rejoin. Fire Giant disappeared as well, so don't be surprised if Sanguine maybe put a pause button on this and then go in instead for the Fire Giant buff. Especially because they have all of their ults available. Relics are going to be coming back. Again, Shinto never had to use his. The rest are recharging from that initial fight. Wrong you, though, maybe caught out here.
Look how tanky he is. He's just going to sustain all of this and doing
care.
nothing to him. They are swinging on this Hercules, and he has only taken half of his HP. Panatom is there, uses his ultimate as well, inbound. The River's Rebuke tries to swing down. Wolfie has taken way too much, and Shinto finishes the job.
Man.
Netroid gets the kill onto inbound as well. Sino falls for the double for Shinto. Ducky over the wall. Gore, Sanguine, they'll just march this one down the mid lane.
Yeah, fire minions coming in on right lane. At
The
this
minions
point,
will get it done.
Go ahead and ignore Ducky. He's just running you across the world for the sake of it. Wowie is going to be able to play a little bit of save state, but look, even if this takes you 10 seconds, you'd still have 20 seconds left before anyone respawns.
No, that's game. Ducky is just going to do his best to clear some of the minions, but it won't matter. Sanguine in 24 minutes, back-to-back style games. The drafts run back. The result run back, and Gore, we have a 3-way tie for third place.
Now, I want to say this, and I need it to come across in the right tone, so I want you to imagine it's a father that's just disappointed in things, and that is that Obey have looked so good throughout so much lately that second game there just felt like spite fueling their gameplay, and it didn't really amount to much. The first 5 minutes, even 10 minutes, was fine, but then the fights got sloppy, things started to fall apart. Sanguine, you have to give them credit, we're pulling them apart anytime they got the opportunity, but I think there were moments where Sanguine got leads even when they didn't need it. You get Sino, who watched two teammates die, still ulting into the backline by himself. It's moments like that where it's just a little questionable, I think, all around. Sanguine, all in ahead, earned their lead and then applied it as heavily handed as they could to Obey, but I think we could have expected more out of Obey there.
Yeah, I agree, and you got to be thrilled, I think, though, for focusing on the good from this matchup, that Sanguine have, at least in this set, returned to form a little bit. They blow Obey out of the water in 2-0 fashion this week. Starts with the 2-0 this week, will end with a 2-0. We'll head it to a quick break, and when we come back, the desk will break down the set.
So the salty run back did not work out this time, Mifflin, and I really got to get our resident stats guy, Gormizer, to figure out if he can the winning percentage of salty run back games, because I feel like it is really, really low. Same composition from game 1, same result as well. Sanguine stomp Obey in game 2.
I didn't think it could look worse in game 2, but I think it really did look a little bit worse. Maybe it potentially... Time to hit the drawing board, I guess, for this pick ban phase. If you can't play Yamoja, don't play Yamoja. That's the only note I have here. We actually had difficulties trying to select which type of clips to play here for Sanguine because every single individual player was able to pop off. It seemed like Obey just didn't have any way to fight in.
It just was not a good game for Obey. I mean, the Yamoja pick, I agree, did not work at all for inbound in this one. It was looking okay until this point where Yarkor waltzes in and steals away the Gold Fury. This then turned into an even bigger team fight win for Sanguine after the fact. Just feels like Obey came in with a game plan, and that game plan was wrong today. And you know what? That happens at times. You know, that can happen to you. I'm not that concerned for Obey after this set. I still think that they've looked a lot better as of late, and I'm going to choose to look at this set as the outlier more so than the last few positive sets being the outlier for them recently.
Hey man, any excuse to have a fellow Obey fanboy on the desk with me is a good one here. I think that you're right to point out that they've looked generally good in the past. It just seems like, I think Gore hit it. Maybe it was frustration, maybe it was stubbornness to run back this exact same draft. I mean, I said it earlier, I think that this draft is good at winning harder, but you saw already that you weren't able to win on it. It's time to look towards something else, and today Obey just really wasn't willing to. But, you know, we've talked about them enough. Let's talk about the winners for a second. Sanguine looks incredibly good. They come in with some early game pressure, which is not exactly their strongest suit. Panatom decides to switch up his playstyle more so to his comfort picks, and I think it's reflected perfectly in his slash line going undying in game 2, 5-0-17. This dude popped off.
1-1-20 as well for Rongyu. Just clean score lines basically across the board. The fact that Yarkor continues to get Amaterasu is legitimately mind-boggling to me. This dude looks like the best player on this god, and everyone looks pretty good on the god. So I think that really says something about what Yarkor is able to put out on this god. Sanguine just looking like they're back to form a little bit here against Obey. And don't forget, Sanguine was on a losing streak right before they came into the set. I believe they were on a 3-set losing streak coming into this. Pretty good way to turn it around and find a dub here.
Hey, a convincing way as well. I mean, Yarkor has a fantastic game. I can't let that stand, though. You think he's got a better Amaterasu than Nika, the man who knows this god inside and out and is able to turn games single-handedly? Maybe not for me.
Listen, man, I think Nika's streaming some Smite Ranked right now, so no one tell him I said that, okay? I'm serious to all of you in chat. No one narc on me. I mean it. I'll be very upset if you do. But hey, Sanguine the ones who got the dub today. Let's throw it down to Dave Olson for a little interview with the winners.
Yeah, Nika not in the set. Instead it was Yarkor. Yarkor, congrats. I will one-up aggro. I don't often get the chance. Unfortunately, it was a 4-game losing streak for you guys. He said 3, giving you a little too much credit. But I want to turn things around here. I mean, obviously you guys very close knit. How does the team respond to something like that? We're going to start with the bad, focus on the good here in just a minute. How does the team react to a bit of a slump there going into a game like this?
I mean, we hate losing. I think everyone hates losing, but you learn when you lose. So I just rather lose here in the face because there is like a lot of things going to happen. So I think it's something that we used to learn. Even if we feel that some of the games that we lose, we should have won. But I mean, you know what you lose, so you just learn, improve, and go next.
Yeah, of course. My ranked teammates could learn a thing from you guys. If you lose, you learn, guys. Take notes on the things you do poorly. And, you know, you run back on the drafts here. Were you surprised that after kind of the dominance of Game 1, that Obey were willing to give you the same exact thing here in Game 2?
I mean, we're always willing to play the same gods if the enemy didn't allow us. Because, we're known for playing the same gods, the meta pick, so if you let it up and we're gonna pick it, and if you want to run it back, we will run it back. So, I mean, it is what do you have to say about that? So.
No, fair enough. Look, I'm not complaining at all if they're going to give me Amaterasu in back-to-back games. And I think a standout performance here from Panatom as well on the Susano in both games here. What did you see in your jungler's performance today? I think he had a lights-out game.
Yeah, I think he's the one who's playing the best right now.
Yep.
Like he's playing just lights out. I mean, we all are playing like good right now,
so.
like, at least today. But Panito is always like standing up, so it feels
And
good
I
to have
believe
someone like that.
The coaches moved into the house now for you guys, right? So do you think
Yeah,
that made
yeah,
a difference in preparation for this week?
Yeah, it's always good to be like for once all together.
Right.
This is the first time that we all, as a team, at 6 members, are in the same place. So that's nice to have it here.
Absolutely. That last unit kind of being together definitely,
Yeah.
I think, gave you guys a little bit of an edge today. Now tied for third with Radiance and PK. You're playing Radiance in your next set, so that's one I think we're all looking forward to. Yarkor, a quick set for you guys, a fun one for us to watch. Congrats on the win today. We'll talk more in the future, I hope. But until then, we'll go back to the desk to round out the day.
Thank you.
Yarkor really spoiling some Sanguine picks there. If you leave Ama open, we're going to take it. Who could have guessed? Everyone could have guessed. That's the way that Sanguine's been playing this whole time. Miff, this Sanguine team, despite the 4-set slide, thanks Dave for correcting me, still tied for third right now. I don't think if you're a Sanguine fan, you've got any reason to worry.
No, every team falls into a slump eventually, and if that game was any indicator, these guys are out of the slump, and they blew out of it straight out of the water. I think that Sanguine in general, there's nothing to be concerned about. These guys play incredibly well together. They get onto these huge heaters. That's where they find the majority of their wins. They play well as a team, and it seems like they're just a group of guys who are friends and love the game, and that energy translates well.
Sure does, especially when you're winning like they did today, 2-0 over Obey Alliance. Only a handful of 2-0 victories this week. Radiance suffering the losing end of 2 out of the 3. They did bounce back today and at least get one win up against Ghost Gaming, but that does not do them a whole lot of favors in the standings. A 3-way tie for third, but 3 different trajectories for those 3 teams. Radiance, the bottom, kind of falling out on that team. PK is rising quickly, and Sanguine trying to steady the ship. Which of those 3 teams, Mifflin, has impressed you the most recently?
It's got to be PK, right? The team that's on the rise, rather, as well as just the reigning world champions. It seems like in the beginning of the phase, at least, they were kind of struggling to make their way into that top 4. I've been describing them as the gatekeeper to the top 4, really able to only consistently take games off of the bottom. But recently, it seems like they got their stuff together. Their team fights are looking more cohesive. Their drafting phase in particular has been largely improved. I think PK is a team to watch out for.
Certainly been looking good so far. Let's take a look at their schedule next week, as well as every team's schedule for week 10, already double digits in the phase 2 weeks. We will have another makeup game next Friday, so if you enjoyed having 3 SPL sets on Friday, I've got good news. It's coming to you next week as well. Radiance versus Sanguine will kick us off, and then PK Renegades, SSG, E United. Ultimately, the Pittsburgh Knights do have 2 games next week. They're up against the Renegades, and they're up against SSG. 2 pretty good tests for this team if they were to keep near that top end of the league.
And speaking of teams on the rise, Renegades is one you got to keep your eye on as well. So I think that PK Renegades game is going to be a really good heat check for the Renegades. But my eyes are glued to Saturday. Radiance up against E United. With Radiance kind of backsliding a little bit in this new E United roster on the rise, I think that's going to be a hugely important set for the league.
E United clearly at the top of the hottest team in the league charts, 3-0 since getting Baskin and Gino on their squad. They have 2 games next week and some difficult ones at that, so it should be pretty fun to watch. Thanks so much for watching Week 9 from everyone here at the SPL Studios, all the casters, production, everyone involved. And of course, Mackenzie, she's playing ranked again, but she told me to say goodbye to you. Thanks so much for watching the SPL this week, everyone. We'll see you next time. For now, you can peach it.